The brand new raid in Modern Warfare 2 is a huge game changer. Modern Warfare 2 Season 1 Reloaded has brought us a new game mode called Raids, which, yes, has some similarities to raids in Destiny. We recently beat the raid on regular difficulty and we're working on veteran next. So I wanted to make this video to show you guys some raid gameplay and also talk about what I think is great about the Modern Warfare 2 raid and also what needs some improving. So yeah, let's talk about it. The first raid in Modern Warfare 2 is called Atomgrad, which actually continues the story of the Modern Warfare 2 campaign, as well as stacks you up against some challenging AI and forces you to solve some puzzles in order to successfully beat the raid. And what's really interesting about the Modern Warfare 2 raid is that it actually continues the campaign's plot. But the first raid seems to actually continue the Modern Warfare 2019 storyline more than Modern Warfare 2, but I will try to avoid spoilers as much as possible for those who have not played it yet. If you are invested in the Modern Warfare 2019 and or Modern Warfare 2 story, I would highly recommend you either play the raids yourself or watch the cutscenes on YouTube. Now, from a gameplay perspective, Infinity Ward suggested to set aside 2+ hours of time to complete this raid, but putting the many crashes that we got aside, it only took about 45 minutes on regular difficulty. This particular raid will require stealth, precision, the ability to deal with some pretty intense and chaotic moments, as well as solving some interesting puzzles and coordinating with your squad in order to survive. I would highly recommend you play some Spec Ops before you attempt the raid and make sure that you have your kits fully maxed out, especially if you're going to try this on veteran difficulty. It will make your runs much more stress-free, and you will definitely want to squad up with people that you know will be able to commit to finishing the raid no matter what. Otherwise, it can be a big time sink. You are able to reach checkpoints at different stages of the raid, but if someone crashes or you just give up on the raid and you leave the session, you will have to start over from the beginning. Overall, I think Infinity Ward adding raids to Modern Warfare 2 is a huge game changer, even if the concept of a raid is borrowed from Destiny or other similar games. In the past, I've said multiple times that Call of Duty would greatly benefit from having some solid PvE experiences, similar to what COD Online was delivering. And while this raid kind of feels more just like a higher difficulty milsim Call of Duty Spec Ops mission, I think it's awesome and a step in the right direction. Infinity Ward has made a pretty big push for AI and bots across every single game mode. Invasion and multiplayer, DMZ, Warzone strongholds, and obviously the campaign and Spec Ops have NPCs, but the raid really puts the spotlight on them and shows how challenging and robust they can be. This first raid has me excited for future Modern Warfare 2 raids, and I hope this is a trend that will carry into future Call of Duty titles and continue to be improved upon and adapted to other games. So far, I've done this raid with Kayrina and Solba from our sub Discord, and we were talking about how amazing an idea like this would be in a game like Black Ops 3, which has even more unique environments and enemy types. The possibilities for how good a Black Ops 3 style raid could be are endless, and that is kind of a big reason why I would like to see raids continue to be added into future Call of Duty games. But so far, this has just kind of been a very general take on what I think about the raids. Now, I do want to talk about what I think Infinity Ward did right with the raid, and also what I think needs improving going forward. Now, I do want to mention beforehand that it's very likely that all 5 raids are already developed and that suggestions for this game are probably useless. So this feedback I'm going to give is more so for future Call of Duty games that might have raids, but it is what it is, man. I mean, typically the way development cycles work is that there's pre-development and then they develop the game, and after a game is released, at least as far as it goes for AAA titles, typically a much smaller team is tasked with patching and fixing the game afterwards, and the main Infinity Ward studio is already probably working on storyboarding for the next Modern Warfare game. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to give some feedback, but it might not be able to completely apply to anything that actually happens with Modern Warfare 2. So let's talk about the pros first, the things that I thought were actually very good with this raid. Right off the bat, what I think is really nice is that this adds some nice gameplay variety to Modern Warfare 2. If you played any of the Spec Ops missions in Modern Warfare 2, you already kind of know that it's somewhat challenging, but really not all that difficult. And you don't necessarily need a ton of coordination in order to pull off the missions. They're almost kind of like a bite-sized version of what the raid has to offer. If you want to squad up with your buddies and try something more difficult that not only requires skill, but also some critical thinking and some problem solving involved with the puzzles as well, I think you'll really enjoy this. On top of the fact that it actually will take some more time, like you're not going to breeze through this unless you're like some kind of crazy speedrunning team. I do think for most people, it's going to take you on average 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on how fast you can figure out the puzzles and also how well you can deal with the enemies. Which is also another great positive about the raid is the fact that it requires teamwork and strategy. Most of the Spec Ops missions in Modern Warfare 2 are a lot more simplistic and don't require as much effort. But the Atomgrad raid requires some decent teamwork and strategy. Right off the bat, you can decide to either slowly push through and take out enemies one at a time as a team, or you can just go underwater and kind of skip past most most of them, but you're eventually going to have to go loud and take out all of these enemies. There's multiple ways to approach and beat the raid, and I love that. It gives so much more depth and replay value to the mission. I also thought it was pretty hilarious when we got to the section where you have to go underwater and share the oxygen tank. Pretty much every time my character was running out of oxygen, I was freaking out and like screaming to get the oxygen tank, but Solba and Kayrina didn't really care. It's just really interesting to see how people do under pressure. I feel like I'm so much more high energy, so I tend to panic and be very vocal about these kinds of things. I already need oxygen. I gotta take it. I gotta take it. Where is she? Yeah, oh my god. I need the oxygen.
I like how Eric panics and we're just like, all right.
Which is also another great part of the raids, is that it does require some decent communication. I think this is a good place to work on your callouts and communication when you're working with your squad. And in general, the raid is just fun to do, and you get a good feeling of accomplishment when you beat it. It felt pretty good to finally beat the raid on regular difficulty, but we definitely want to reattempt this on veteran because it's going to feel even better to beat it on the hardest difficulty. But next up, let's talk about the cons, the negatives, the things that I would like to see improved. This first point I want to make has more to do with this specific raid, but it also ties into a more generalized point that I'm going to make. So specifically at the end of the raid, there is a blue room and a red room that two players are going to have to be in and fight off enemies, while they're trying to read off numbers that another player is going to have to enter into the cipher thingy. But yeah, the blue room at the end is significantly more difficult than the red room, and it makes completing the end of the raid way more difficult for whoever has to call out the numbers in that room. The sheer amount of enemies and bomb drones that spawn on top of the possibility of gas being deployed in the room on veteran is at times just too difficult. It almost forces your team to wipe, which is just not great. This is just my opinion, but I feel like raids should require skill and coordination, and relying on RNG and luck makes things way more inconsistent. But I'm not the developer, and maybe that's just intentional on Infinity Ward's part. But one thing that we also don't 100% know is if the bots in the raid factor in actual skill-based matchmaking, meaning that if you're a higher skilled player, the bots will be smarter and more difficult, versus if you're a lower skilled player, the bots will basically be recruit bots, and you'll end up telling the internet the raid was a piece of cake, and you don't know why anyone else is complaining that it's too hard. It would definitely be nice to have some transparency about how difficult the bots are depending on your skill, because one thing I've noticed as someone who has attempted the raid on regular and veteran difficulty is that the difficulty of the bots does not seem to be different between regular and veteran. So far, the only noticeable difference is the fact that you get less revive attempts for each section, and sometimes you're timed depending on what part of the raid you're doing, which does increase the amount of pressure put on you for all of these different sections, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the bots are on a veteran difficulty. But next up, we have to talk about the rewards that you get for completing the raid, because it's one of the most important parts. I think that the drops that you get for playing the raids need serious improving. While unlocking the Gaz skin for beating regular is nice, the rewards that you get should not be shared with the loot pool from DMZ. If you beat and complete a raid in this game, you should be getting raid specific rewards, very similarly to how it works in Destiny. Now, I did get this information from Solba, so if he's wrong, then you guys can get mad at him. But he was telling me that the drops in the raid are basically shared with the weapon cache loots from DMZ. And I'm pretty sure it's way easier to loot a weapon cache from DMZ and extract with that than completing the entire raid with a group of 3 people. So yeah, that's my advice to Infinity Ward. It would be so much nicer to have raid specific drops for beating the raid. But yeah, next up, I think you should be able to solo the raid or do it with 2 people. This would make the raid so much more challenging and increase the replayability. One of the coolest things I remember from the original Destiny was when people would be soloing the Crota raid. Watching other streamers and YouTubers trying to solo raids is so entertaining, and it's so interesting watching them theory craft and try to figure out how to beat these things on their own. The difficulty goes way up and the skill required just spikes. And I do feel strongly that we should be able to attempt the raid either on our own or with another person, but not force us to play with 3. Which brings me to my next point. I think that they should add a leaderboard for people who complete the raid. It would be really interesting to see the different times that people get for completing the raid with their squad. This would be amazing for speedrunners, and again, it would add so much replay value because people would be fighting to get the fastest time possible. If I'm not mistaken, I think it says that Infinity Ward beat the raid in like 21 minutes, which I don't really believe. And I'll definitely be keeping an eye out on people who have been attempting to speedrun the raid, because I find stuff like that to be very interesting and it's just so cool. But yeah, I think it would be an amazing feature if Infinity Ward added a leaderboard that would track certain stats for completing the raid, whether that's the amount of kills you get, how fast you and your team actually completed the raid, etc. Now, this next point I want to bring up indirectly affects the raids, but I feel like Spec Ops should be 3-player, so all 3 players can complete Spec Ops together and rank up their kits before going into the raid. To put it simply, you can only play Spec Ops 2-player, but you have to play raids with 3 people. This creates a super inconsistent flow. I mean, if you fail the raid and you want to try to rank up your Spec Ops kits, only 2 people can play Spec Ops together and rank up their kits, and then the third person is going to be on their own. Honestly, this just kind of seems like a lapse in judgment, and I don't think they'll be able to fix this for the current game. But in Modern Warfare 2, since your Spec Ops kits are used in the raid, I feel like that's something that they should have thought about more before implementing this. It just would have made a lot more sense if you could play Spec Ops with 3 people, and then once you're done playing Spec Ops missions together, you can all 3 go play the raid. This next point I want to bring up is something that I've talked about before, and I still do feel very strongly about it. I think that the raids should have matchmaking. I think if the Modern Warfare 2 raids had matchmaking with forced game chat, this would be amazing for solo players or people who don't have friends who play the game. This is also a feature that Destiny lacks for raids, and Modern Warfare 2 is lacking it as well. If you already have 2 buddies to play the raid with, then this isn't going to impact your experience because you're already set. But if you're someone who is alone in this situation, you'll either have to join a random group online in the game or join a Discord dedicated to completing the raid, etc. Having built-in matchmaking for raids in the game would simply just be easier for those who don't have anyone else to squad up with. And it seems like a no-brainer feature because there's matchmaking for basically everything else in the game. I do understand that there are some counterpoints to be made to this. People don't necessarily want to matchmake with people who won't take it seriously, or maybe they're just really bad at it, or maybe there's people in there who are going to troll and not actually try. But I do feel like the majority of people who wants to play this and invest their time into it wants to actually beat it. But yeah, for the time being, and most likely for the rest of this game's life cycle, you're probably going to want to find people to raid with consistently. And the last point I want to make, which is already being addressed and fixed, which is nice, is the stability and crashing issues. I did want to mention this even though Infinity Ward has been progressively fixing it, which is great, but do keep in mind that this can impact and ruin your runs. So for example, let's say you've been playing the raid for 20 minutes and you're roughly halfway done with it. If someone in your party crashes or their internet goes out, that's not just a wipe, you have to restart the whole thing from the beginning. Now again, I don't know if they'll be able to implement this for Modern Warfare 2, but you should be able to reconnect to the raid group if your game does crash or if your internet goes out. It would make the experience so much smoother and more forgiving when it comes to issues that are out of your hands. This is kind of similar to like if you're playing a game of competitive Counter-Strike and your internet goes out and you're given a certain amount of time to rejoin and reconnect to the server. I would like to see a feature like that come to raids at some point. But yeah, that's pretty much it for my thoughts and opinions and what I think is good and bad about the Modern Warfare 2 raid so far. But I definitely want to hear from you guys. What do you think about the first Modern Warfare 2 raid? Definitely leave a comment letting me know what you think about the first ever Call of Duty raid and what do you think they could improve for raids in the future. And with that being said, I really do hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did and you want to see raids in more Call of Duty games, make sure to drop a like. I'll see you guys later. 30 seconds, guys.
There's people that are coming.
I got a shotgun.
I got that weird spawn coming again.
50 seconds left.
Got him on that weird spawn. Going back to left.
Up in 10
seconds. Lighten up.
2, 1. Get back here.
Come back.
Secure the area.
Alright, we're here, we're here.
Clear the area. It says clear the area.
We good?
A few guys.
Try now, try it. Yep, yep.
Okay,
Come
go
on.
now. Go now.
We're good, we're good.
Yes!
Can we do it?
Let's go!
Can we beat it? Good shit, hell yeah.
10 times the charm.
Nah, that was our first try.
Alright,
Oh, yeah,
I'm
for
a
sure.
veteran.
Sure, that's
Oh my god, I have another access key.
Guys, check left.
I always have.
One left. No movement. Eyes front. Show your hands! Door! Door! They're all dead.
Easy, they could be rigged.
No wires. These two are clear. All clear here.
These are my soldiers. This is Arif. He volunteered to go in with Alex.
Then where the hell's Alex?
Echo 3-1, this is Kilo Actual. How copy? Echo 3-1, do you read?
Roger, this is Bravo in a blind radio check. Laswell, are you getting this? Kate?
We're too deep. No signals.
Oh no.
Concrete and metal. Can't send or receive.
Yeah, it's a silo, all right.
This is not good.
It's not looking
Power.
good.
don't turn it on.
Oh, what have you done? They just lost.
He fucked up.
Oh my god.
Holy hell.
Ya tara salam rakhira hina.
Soviet ICBM. Liquid fuel, supersonic.
Nuclear.
Thermonuclear,
50 years old.
at least.
You think there's a warhead up there?
Let's find out.
God damn.
Oh my god, it gave me a heart attack. Gave me a heart attack.
That was
it
awesome.
popped up the HUD for a second. I'm like, please tell us we don't have to do this anymore.
I got a Forest Price player card. What'd you guys get?
Yeah, I got the same thing.
I got a gun.
Oh, you got a weapon blueprint?
Lucky.
Yeah.
Come on.
That's sick. Let's go.
What the
What'd
hell,
you get?
man?
What kind of blueprint? That's so awesome.
Yeah, for what?
I don't know. I wasn't paying attention.
10,000
We're over
XP
here
for that?
drooling at the idea of getting a weapon blueprint. She gets in, doesn't care.
Whatever. Doesn't matter.
I don't care. I'm not gonna fucking use it. Woo! We're doing a supply drop opening today. Activision, I think, sent this care package